Hi everyone. I'm going to go ahead and start now that it's 4:05. As I said, I want to welcome everyone to the TechRRT webinar. Today's webinar is on the recent deployment to Puntland and regions of Central South Somalia. If I can first ask if everyone can go down to on the bottom right hand side of your screen. There's a button that says audio on or audio off, and a video on, video off. If you can set your audio and your video to off, unless you're wanting to talk to everyone, that would be very useful. I believe we have somebody who's still on. So right now, the people that I can see that are their audio on, one is called Paris. If you can turn your audio off, that would be appreciated. Yep, and I think that's it. I think everyone else is good to go. Wonderful. And with that, we're trying to just sort out, there we go, okay. The screen sharing. I'm going to go ahead and start, and in a little bit while, we'll hand over for a minute, okay. All right, so welcome to today's webinar. As I already said, today's webinar from the TechRRT, it's on the recent deployment of Puntland and regions of South Central Somalia. So first, to just what we're going to include in today's webinar, just the format of the call. We've got an introduction and the objectives of the webinar. We have a very brief overview of what the TechRRT is, a small bit of background to the deployment. Then we have a presentation. We're actually presenting, and I'll tell you who they are in just a minute. And then we're going to have at the very end overall lessons learned and the next steps and recommendations, finally followed by open discussion. That's, as you'll see, part of the objective of the webinar. So first, for the objectives of the webinar, the main objective is to foster discussion on the situation in country. It's also to share information about the TechRRT deployments. This is actually our third webinar so far. We only started doing them recently, and we're learning with each one. So hopefully they're just going to get better and better. And I think it is helping to share information on what's been done in country. It also, because of information sharing, it helps to follow up work that's done during the deployment. Today, I'm my name is Andy Kendall. I'm the program manager for the TechRRT. We also have Fatmata Sise. She's a nutrition specialist from UNICEF Somalia, who's going to be presenting some bits of the work today. And we have Michelle Gorgan, who's our IYCFE CMAM advisor, and she's the one from our team who participated in Somalia. Support on IYCFE. Okay, so what is the TechRRT? The TechRRT, it's a technical rapid response mechanism to support collective work for nutrition in emergencies.
We can all see you.
Just a quick question. I think somebody's talking. Maybe you could mute your audio, please. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so the TechRRT, it's a consortium of 3 NGOs. It's led by International Medical Corps in collaboration with Action Against Hunger and Save the Children. We have funding from USAID, OFTA. We are very much appreciative of that to be able to undertake the deployments that we've done to date. We work in close collaboration with the Global Nutrition Cluster and UNICEF. The objectives of the TechRRT are to improve overall emergency nutrition response. We do that by deploying technical advisors. We currently have 4 advisors on our team in different technical areas. We also provide technical support, and non-deployment time, our advisors work to further their technical area. It's going to help the collective nutrition community. Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Fatmata to introduce a little bit about the background of the deployments. Over to you, Fatmata. Fatmata, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Can you?
I think we can't see the screen, Andy. I think other participants are having an issue as well. The screen
Really?
is
Okay.
not shared. Yeah.
Okay, let's see what's going on. Thank you for letting me know.
Hello, Andy, can you hear me? Hello?
Hi, Fatmata. I can hear you. I think we're just trying to share the screen. Can you see the screen?
No?
Yeah, Fatmata, can
Yes?
you hear me? Can you? I
Yes, I
think
can
we're
hear.
working on sharing. I think we're working on sharing the screen, so it's just going to be 1 minute.
Can I wait? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Can you see the screen?
No, it's still blank.
Okay, yeah, I think we're working on the technical issue. So if everyone will just sit back for a minute, hopefully we'll have it sorted in 1 minute.
Okay. Everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, Andy, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Oh, great. And can you see my screen?
No, it's still blank.
It's still blank. Okay. Let's see.
Michelle, can you share your
Hear me?
screen, please?
Yeah, I think the issue is there's someone called Eva who's sharing her screen. I don't know if one of the participants, but I have,
Okay,
yeah,
there you
maybe
go.
now
I
it's, I
think I
think now
just
it's,
got it now.
there we go.
Just a second. Although now it doesn't want to do anything. There we go. Okay. You can see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. These ones are not so important. I talked through everything. Maybe you don't really need to see what was written. I'm just going to get to where we need to be. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna hand over now to Fatmata. Unfortunately, I think we've got a thing at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so that you're gonna miss a little bit of a bar at the bottom. I'm sorry about that. I can't get it to turn off. We were trying to switch presenters, but it hasn't worked. Okay, Fatmata, can I hand over to you to start going into the background of the deployment and the situation in Somalia?
Yes. Yes, please. Yes,
Thank
please.
you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. For those of you that are not in East Africa, I am Fatmata Sise, as been introduced. I will take you through the background, the facts and figures about Somalia. I am sure most of you are already aware, but this is just to set the tone of the presentation so that you are aware of the operating context. Somalia has a population of about roughly 13 million, and it is estimated that 6.7 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance, according to our 2017 HRP. And some of the key issues you need to be aware about. The ongoing conflict and access constraints in Somalia. I am sure this is well known by many of you. And there is also persistent and expanding drought, which weakens the coping capacity and livelihoods and erodes livelihoods. There is also the alarming food insecurity and nutrition rates. Then the cyclical disease outbreaks, which includes the AWDs, and then the new unprotected internal displacements, which includes the refugees returning from Kenya, from Dadaab. I'm sure most of you know Dadaab or have heard about Dadaab. Next slide, please. Nutrition situation in Somalia. I am sure most of you are also very aware that the GAM rates are very high. In 2016, the global acute malnutrition rates are at 14.9%, of which 3.0% are severe acutely malnourished children. And as at now, about 1.4 million under fives are estimated to be severely acutely malnourished, and of which 277,000 are severely acutely malnourished. And over at the beginning of the year, about 50. We have seen about 50% increase in some cases, and we expect to see further deterioration. As you can see on the map at the left, the situation is very critical at the moment. About 15 to 30% of children are malnourished. Next slide, please. Moving to infant and young child feeding context in Somalia, I'm pleased to say that since last year we did an infant and young child feeding assessment, which revealed that there have been significant improvement in infant and young child feeding in Somalia, especially around breastfeeding indicators. Exclusive breastfeeding at the rate of 33%, continued breastfeeding 46%, and then breastfeeding up to 2 years at 15%. Even though these rates are not very not meeting the global targets per se, but they are still not very bad. It shows that there has been an improvement since the last time we did a national survey in 2009. However, some of these gains, are really challenged by a number of factors, which includes the strong cultural beliefs and practices in Somalia, and this includes the fact that women and community members believe that consuming colostrum is a bad practice, and then the women limit the food intake in the third trimester just to reduce the size of the baby because it is perceived that it makes childbearing easier. And then there are also other several beliefs around infant and young child feeding, which includes, there was one interesting point that came during the TechRRT deployment during the IYCFE sessions, that women are not breastfeeding at night because they fear that children will get suffocated. And there is also the belief that breast milk is not sufficient to fully cover the needs of the baby, so other foods are introduced before the baby is even 6 months old. Other foods including tea, milk, honey, and the like. Then hugely, there are societal pressures to bottle feed. Our 2016 assessment revealed that about 50% of women in Somalia introduce bottles. They give a breast milk substitute. And some of the reasons for this are related to the fact that women perceive bottle feeding as an easier means of feeding their babies, and then milk substitutes are readily available in the market, and there are no regulations. The code is not implemented, is not in place, and so many other factors. And women think that it's the norm to feed babies using bottles. So this is really a big challenge issue in Somalia. And you are all aware about the limited access to healthcare services, as well as the food insecurity situation, which really compounds our complementary feeding indicators, which are currently very low. Can I see the next one, please? But having said that, I am pleased to also say that the government is firmly committed to supporting infant and young child feeding in Somalia. We do have IYCF strategies that are available across all the zones in Somalia, for the legislation code, as well as marketing of support the legislation and marketing of breast milk substitute. But just to let you know that we have drafted the code. It's already endorsed at technical level committee, but it has not been taken to parliament. But also, as an interim measure, the government has signed the interim policy on breastfeeding, which we hope to push forward various parameters. A joint statement has also been issued by the cluster at the onset of emergency, just to help to provide the framework with which our key partners, as well as ministries and donors, work with in terms of donations, as well as promoting infant and young child feeding. Additionally, an infant and young child feeding training package has been adapted in Somalia context, the infant and young child feeding UNICEF community-based package, and we do have a pool of IYCF trainers across Somalia have already commenced training of key focal point at ministry level, worker level, as well as NGO level. Then pleased to also say that there is an emergency, a joint emergency preparedness response and contingency plan, which was developed with the key components of nutrition in that plan. Also to note that UNICEF gets about 75% of the country in terms of programming for SAM, and this target also covers infant and young child feeding as a component, because we do have what we call basic nutrition services package, which has IYCF as a key component. So to summarize, these are the key. This is the background so far in terms of nutrition and infant and young child feeding, in particular for Somalia. Over to you, Andy.
In fact, thank you, Fatmata. In fact, Michelle is going to present the next slides. Michelle, over to you.
Okay, so hi, my name is Michelle Gergen, and I'm the TechRRT advisor who was deployed to Somalia. And just to expand upon a little bit the background, the IYCF context, and the government commitment to IYCFE that Fatmata was discussing, UNICEF and Save the Children regional offices conducted last year in 2016 an IYCFE capacity mapping assessment. And this was a comprehensive review of all, I think the screen just went blank. Oh, there we go. This was a comprehensive review of all IYCFE documents. They did a lot of interviews with people from donors, NGOs, local NGOs, people rolling out IYCF programs to see what the actual situation on the ground was. So I thought it would be interesting to include some of the outtakes from this. So the capacity mapping assessment revealed the following. The legislation, even though it was created, it was still waiting approval and endorsement from the government, which has been noted to take quite some time in Somalia. And that IYCFE rollout remains poor and the implementation is isolated and random. And that though there is an emphasis with emergency programming on food security and CMAM, but often IYCF indicators are not included in either assessments or in programs. And even though there is a national IYCF program, IYCFE programming needs a lot more further strengthening and to really scale up. And then in looking at the knowledge base between IYCF and IYCFE, most people interviewed could not differentiate between the two or the preparedness and response phases of emergencies. This assessment also uncovered that there's very limited monitoring for breast milk substitute code violations. And then overall, Somalia as an entire country was rated fair for their policy, strategy, and plans. And I think this is large part due to the fact that IYCFE was not integrated as a component to that. And then the second output from this capacity mapping assessment was a regional framework for action. And as we'll get into a little bit later, this is where a lot of the response plan comes from. We can go to the next slide. I think, Andy, it's you.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Michelle will be back in just a second. I just wanted to briefly, now that we've heard all the background about what was happening in Somalia and the context for IYCF, I wanted to just go quickly into the reasons for the TechRRT request. If the slide will come. Okay, technical difficulties again. Okay. So the TechRRT advisor was requested for infant and young child feeding in emergencies. The idea was that she was going to design an IYCFE response plan, including activities and a timeline, and work to create guidance on breast milk substitutes, management of breast milk substitutes. She was also requested to build technical capacity for breastfeeding safe spaces and mother-baby areas, as well to try to strengthen the links that exist with the other sectors, as there's a lot that can be done in that regard. So the deployment actually took place from the 10th of April until the 17th of May, and as TechRRT advisors need to be hosted by an agency, Michelle was actually hosted by UNICEF. Okay, now I'm going to hand back over to Michelle for her to tell about her deployment and what was undertaken then. Over to you, Michelle.
I'm going to share my screen. So can everyone see my screen? Okay. So during the deployment, because the security situation is a bit challenging in Somalia, we decided that the best way to reach the most partners at once was to conduct some workshops and invite the partners to those workshops. And in these workshops, we really worked on developing the details of the IYCFE response plan. And we also did some development of the breast milk substitute guidelines and training on how to recognize violations of the code, and then shared the mother-baby area specifications. And then we did some trainings to make sure that all participants who attended these workshops had the skills and capacity to really roll out this entire response plan. So not only was it the development of this response plan, but there was a training component to it as well. So participants left the workshop with the skills and tools necessary to roll these out. We did 2 workshops. One was in Garwe and one was in Mogadishu, and had a total of 48 participants. So 32 from local and international NGOs, 12 from the Ministry of Health, and 4 from UNICEF. And because one of the key components of this IYCFE response plan was multi-sectoral integration, we had a lot of different sectors present. So these included WASH, health, nutrition, and protection. So in developing the IYCFE response plan, to go over this in detail because it's a pretty typical IYCFE response plan, and a lot of these elements were really derived from the regional framework for IYCFE that was developed with the IYCFE capacity mapping assessment. But in a nutshell, the response plan really focuses on providing support to mothers and caregivers, protecting breastfeeding, limiting the use of breast milk substitutes in bottle feeding, and then ensuring effective communication and dissemination of all IYCFE guidelines and policies. So some of the key activities that participants came up with, and I think because we included a lot of other sectors in this workshop, was to really do an orientation of all partners on IYCFE. The participants from other sectors in these workshops were extremely interested in a lot of the stuff that was presented, and mentioned that there was a further need for other sectors to be made aware of IYCFE initiatives and programs. And I thought one of the ways of doing this was to really advocate to have an IYCFE representative attend all cluster meetings and kind of do a little presentation on IYCFE, recognizing code violations and what to do, and that kind of thing. And another one was to really advocate to include IYCFE in national health and nutrition plans, and this includes national budgets, so to really put it on the national agenda. And then include IYCFE indicators into PCA's assessments, proposals, and budgets. And later in the presentation, Fatimata will get into the progress that's been done on that. And rolling out the mother-baby areas that everyone was trained on, because now that they're trained, they should implement them. And then to really develop a strong IYCFE supervision plan and on-the-job coaching. And this supervision plan also includes monitoring of code violations. And so because a large part of the sectoral integration had a lot of different sectors present at the workshops, we had participant programs in Somalia, And I just picked some of the main ideas out of this activity to present because I thought some of them were interesting. So one of the first ones was with IMAM programs to really make sure IYCF indicators are routinely included in all IMAM reports, and to try to have an IYCF counselor based at each IMAM facility. And then for distributions, to really prioritize families with infants less than 24 months, and to use distribution sites as a point of contact for IYCF programs, and then to train distribution staff on key IYCF messages, and especially if complementary feeding rations are being distributed, to make sure that people receiving those understand how to give those rations with breastfeeding. And then the WASH sector had some typical, including IYCF messages into WASH activities and prioritizing families with children less than 24 months. So those activities were in there. But one of the interesting things they brought up was to really include IYCF into WINS, which is the WASH in Schools programs. And so they're already creating areas and making sure there's latrines for girls who are menstruating. And so they thought to include breastfeeding areas here as well to encourage young mothers who've had children to re-enter school. So I thought that was quite an interesting idea. And then looking at maternal child health and nutrition, not only training people in these programs on IYCF, but making sure there's a strong link and referral system between MCH programs and IYCF activities, such as mother-baby areas and support. And then for mobile clinics, which there are a few around in Somalia, so to have roving mother-baby areas on mobile clinic days, and then to have IYCF counselors at each mobile clinic. And then education, they also expanded on the idea of having breastfeeding childcare areas in school to help encourage young mothers to return to get their education, and including IYCF education messages and coursework of all students. And this we'll see a bit more later in the presentation, that there's quite a gender, there's very specific gender roles in Somalia. And so we actually had a discussion with the participants on how to encourage both genders to participate in IYCF activities. And one of the ways was to include IYCF education in schools. So early on, everyone would receive the educational messages. So then we reviewed the breast milk substitute guidelines and did a lot of practical sessions on how to identify. And then we posed a question to participants, and we asked them what they thought the best way to implement the breast milk substitute management guidelines were, just because it's such a problem, the use of breast milk substitutes in bottle feeding in Somalia. So they had a lot of really good ideas. One of them was to advocate to pass local legislation. So Somalia is a signatory of the International Code. However, there's no national legislation regarding the code. And then the second one was really to train people on the code. Once participants understood the risks of breast milk substitutes, they really understood that it was a public duty to enforce the code. And then the development of a committee and task force who follows everything related to the code and conducts trainings and advocacies. And really using the nutrition cluster is a tool to inform all clusters and different actors on violations of the code and how to report them. And they mentioned really involving local community leaders, people at community level, and also people at health facility level, really integrating the code into the health system, using the media advocacy and continuing to promote breastfeeding and discouraging breast milk substitute use, and then to conduct an assessment to determine really the ways of how breast milk substitute is infiltrating communities. So these were some really interesting ideas that they had of ways to promote breast milk substitutes, or to avoid the use of breast milk substitutes. And then one of the last activities we did was we trained all participants on every aspect of running a mother-baby area. And as you can see the photos on this slide, we had 10 mothers and their babies show up, and the participants ran a mock mother-baby area. So in this top photo on the left, you can see one of the participants doing a simple rapid assessment for one of the mothers. The next picture on the top right is a woman learning how to wash her little girl's hands. And then if you look at the bottom right, 2 of the participants are leading a discussion group, or support group discussion for the mothers. And then on the bottom left, they are leading a play session, which was a lot of fun. I think everyone really enjoyed this activity. And it was a really good learning experience, not only to put technical skills to test, but also to work on facilitating discussion groups and drawing people in. And then one of the big questions posed, like I mentioned earlier, was the gender gap and how to encourage mothers and fathers to participate. So we posed the question first to participants about mothers and how they could participate. And of course, the first answer was incentives. But then the other reasons mothers participated were noted that when a mother has a difficulty with an aspect of infant and young child feeding, the activities need to be interesting and useful to the mother. And I think this really goes back to having really strong skills for discussions and conducting IYCF counseling to make sure that the activities we're rolling out are useful. And just activities are available in communities and promoted. And then involving community leaders and make sure community leaders are aware of these programmings and that they support participation in these programs. And then we posed the question to the fathers, which involved a lot of interesting discussion amongst the male participants. But one of the general feedbacks was that it's uncomfortable going to support groups or health facilities or mother-baby areas. And so one of the tools was to really meet at their homes and discuss IYCF topics and to utilize times when the fathers are available. So Friday prayer or tea times were noted. And then really consider having father-specific activities and not always combining mothers and fathers. One participant in Puntland noted that they had an experience of hosting a combined discussion group and said that the fathers really dominated the discussion and the mothers never spoke. So that was an interesting takeaway. And then also to make sure fathers are aware of programs, because a lot of IYCFE programs really target pregnant and lactating women, and with children less than 24 months, they're caregivers, and so the fathers aren't always informed. And now I'm going to pass to Fatmata to present the lessons learned.
Fatmata, are you
Fatmata,
there?
can you hear me?
Okay. Sorry, my audio was off. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Just to take you through the key lessons learned during the sessions, we realized that other sectors were keenly interested in learning a lot about IYCF. As Michelle already highlighted, we had other sectors including WASH, health, nutrition, of course, protection and nutrition. They all showed keen interest in understanding a lot more about IYCF, as well as integrating nutrition and infant and young child feeding into their programs. Then another key lesson learned is that though national documents are available, like the joint statement, very few people during the sessions are aware about this, because the statements, this documents are developed at top level, or they don't necessarily trickle down to especially the field staff. And then in terms of code reporting and monitoring, the code reporting form was shared a long time ago with the cluster, by the cluster, but we wanted to understand why partners were still not reporting on code violations. And we were made to understand that people didn't want to share their identity when reporting code violations. And they suggested to us that everything that has to include identification, whether name, organization, address, should be deleted from the form. And we did that, so hopefully we'll be able to see a lot more reporting on code violations. Then another one is that there is a lot of concern about IYCF advocacy, because many people think that a lot of advocacy is done around CMAM activities and very little around IYCF, and that there is need for IYCF advocacy at all cluster meetings and every other relevant nutrition meeting. And then we realized that the people that participated in the sessions were at a higher level of IYCF in terms of technical knowledge. So it was very clear that most people that participate had a stronger technical background on infant and young child feeding, and they were already previously trainers for infant and young child feeding using the UNICEF community-based package. Next slide, please. In terms of recommendations and next steps, these are the list. This is the list of recommendations. I mean, as highlighted by the participants. But I'll also take you through how far we have gone in implementing some of the recommendations and the key next steps for the recommendations that are still pending. We have disseminated the IYCFE response plan, the MBA specifications, and BMS management guidelines through the cluster. They are now all available on the cluster website, and the cluster has also disseminated these guidelines through emails to key partners. Then we are currently integrating the MBAs and BMS guidelines into our existing programs, like the program document development. The program development that's currently being done in Puntland and the regions of South Central. We have ensured that most partners that are supporting us in scaling interventions for the emergency have also integrated infant and young child feeding in emergencies component in their PCs. Then in terms of advocacy at meetings in other sectors, hopefully in the next cluster meeting, we'll use this as an opportunity to disseminate these guidelines that have been developed, as well as using our existing IYCF technical working groups in the zones to disseminate these guidelines. Then in terms of quarterly half-year review, this is also being planned. Definitely, this is something we are going to factor into our IYCF technical working group reviews at all zones. Then the joint statement, of course, is still being widely disseminated to all partners, and all the participants that attended the workshop also received a copy, and hopefully will be able to integrate some of these key activities into our upcoming World Breastfeeding Week and other relevant events as we see fit. Then for supervision planning, this is also currently on course. Hopefully, once we finalize the PD development and then partners are already implementing infant and young child feeding, we'll be able to follow up on supervision. Then for advocacy for resource mobilization and investment in IYCF, this is already it's already on course, it's in progress. Just that we are making deliberate effort to focus on infant and young child feeding in emergency in light of the current situation in Somalia. Then, as Michelle earlier mentioned, we are only able to conduct the workshop in two places, in the central south regions of Somalia as well as Puntland. But we were awaiting the end of the Ramadan to conduct the training, the workshop, the sessions in Somaliland, and currently we are planning for this to be done any time from now, so that the entire country receive this key technical information. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you, Fatmata and Michelle. Okay, and that concludes our presentation. But now it's time for us to discuss. If anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in or to write them in the chat screen. Either way, whichever you prefer. Anybody want to start to see what you're interested to talk about for the remaining time? Okay, everybody's quiet. I know there was some.
No, we're not quiet. We are trying to. Hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
this is John. I'm seated next to Fatmata, and I was following everything as she was presenting the findings. So my name is John. I work for UNICEF in Somalia, and I work with Fatmata. I just wanted to say a few words. First of all, thanking you very much, TechRRT, for the support you extended to Somalia. And for us, this couldn't have come at a better time than now, because like we have seen on the map and even heard in the news, the nutrition and food security situation in Somalia is deteriorating very rapidly. we're even fearing the worst to come, which is famine. But we continue to monitor, and everybody is working very hard around the corner to avert famine. As people try to fight back against the deepening drought, a lot has been lost so far. They have lost lives and livelihoods. And in such a situation, usually people even lose the little they know, particularly when it comes to practicing IYCF. So this support was really timely because now all of us at the humanitarian community is trying to ensure that we promote and protect IYCF. So this was very much appreciated. So, and we also need to scale up, like we have seen the challenges, we have limited reach. So this is really the time for us to do this. And going forward, would like to implement those recommendations, but also document our experience when we manage to get out of this. Would like to document what we have gone through so that other countries can benefit from this. So looking forward, we have a lot of work to do, and we'll continue to look forward to your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, John. I also wanted to. I'm very happy that the support was timely, and that you think it will help you in going forward. That's always good to hear. There's a question that's just come in. How feasible is it to report code violations when policy is not yet endorsed? Perhaps Fatmata or John or another participant can respond to that.
Fatmata, do you want to take it or do you want me to take it? Hello?
You can start. You can start.
So just to confirm, so Somalia is in the World Health Assembly, and so Somalia is internationally a signatory of the code, so they are therefore obliged to uphold the code. So just because they don't have local legislation yet passed on this does not mean that they do not have a responsibility to uphold the code, because they are a member of the WHA. And then with that said, a lot of it, I think, really is communication, like sharing the reporting form, making sure people are familiar with what a violation of the code is and how to report it, and then making sure the nutrition cluster has very clear ways of dealing with each different types of violations. I don't know if Fatmata, you want to continue on that.
I think you hit the nail on the head. That's the most important factor. As Somalia is a signatory to the World Health Assembly, and I think we, in as much as the code has not been endorsed, it's very important that we report on these violations and build on evidence so that we can move forward in terms of actions and advocacy at higher level. Because without strong evidence, it will be difficult to do a very strong advocacy on why we should ensure that the code is enacted in Somalia.
Thank you both for that response. I hope that answered the question, Daib. Alison has a question. Would it be possible to include WFP in these types of missions, both the training and the rollouts? I think given that distribution points and MCHN are both points of intervention that could work well. Also, we can include IYCF-E more explicitly in our partner agreements, so we could help monitor the counseling and messaging outcomes. And finally, WFP is really interested in reducing malnutrition, so IYCF is a big part of our strategy for nutrition. maybe first I can just say a few small words before handing over to either Michelle or to Fatmata. The TechRRT in general, it's supposed to be supporting a collective. So in principle, all partners should really be involved. All partners that are involved in nutrition within any location should really be in part of the process. Somalia was a little bit more difficult situation, generally speaking. With the fact that Michelle wasn't able to be in Somalia until partway through the deployment, and so there was some difficulty in her involvement with all of the cluster partners. But I think it's a really good point, and that WFP should be a really central actor in what the TechRRT is doing. Or maybe more specifically for this one, I'll hand over to you both.
Yes, indeed. This is John speaking. I'm seated next to Fatmata. Yes, indeed. That's a very important point. And in Somalia, at country level, including at global level, we have a strong collaboration on this. We are now integrating. We are trying as much as possible to integrate what we do in the IMAM delivery, and we have standard packages. The basic services nutrition package includes a number of activities which are shared between the two agencies. We are trying as much as possible to ensure that wherever there is a supplementary feeding center, next to it there is an outpatient or inpatient treatment center, and the messages are delivered the same way. And both agencies are using the same guidelines to deliver services. So indeed, there's need to really to strengthen this and be able to promote. And secondly, WFP is part of the cluster in Somalia. Actually, UNICEF is the lead, but WFP is the joint leader. So this becomes really an obligation and very, very essential that that IYSF is promoted by both agencies.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. Just to add on this, during the last cluster meeting, the training dates were announced, and every agency was encouraged to participate in the training. But I'm also pleased to announce that all of the document, everything that has been done to date, has been posted on the cluster website, and we will ensure to work closely with the BFP to roll out the IYCFE response plan, because we know they have a critical role to play in ensuring that we scale up infant and young child feeding in emergencies in Somalia. And as you can see from the multi-sectoral slide that Michelle has showed, there is a critical role for WFP there, including the distributions and even the MCHN program that they are currently doing. So definitely, yes, sure. This will be like a key next step the cluster will take to ensure that everyone else is on board and doing the same thing together. Thank you.
Okay, there have been a couple of comments, questions that have come in. One is, I would like to agree with the findings stating that the IYCF component is not very strong in Somalia. Most organizations tend to focus more on CMAM. How will UNICEF going to address this, and what community strategies will they employ? That's the first one. The second one is, if violation of BMS code reported, what punishment expecting to face for those involving the violation, or just we are reporting and recording cases?
Can I start with the last one?
Go for it.
This is Fatmata. Okay, the code that has been drafted already, that is yet to pass through Parliament or endorsed by Parliament, has key well, as the person put it here, punishment for whosoever violates the code. So it's already there. It's written down. What needs to happen is really to take this to Parliament and endorse it. But at this stage, no punitive actions will be taken for code violators. We just want to ensure that the information is documented, and then the cluster takes the lead in ensuring that strong advocacy is done so that government can pass the code into parliament and then endorse it. So I think it's critical that we report because, like I mentioned, without strong evidence, what is there to advocate for?
And also to complement on that, the current response to the drought should be taken as an opportunity for us to accelerate on some of these issues. Right now, we have a new government which has just been elected, and it's beginning to take shape. So that is also an opportunity because they are beginning to get interest in nutrition. They have just drafted a national development plan in which there's a pillar on health and a sub pillar on in nutrition. So this is a government-owned document, and it becomes a very good opportunity to push such initiatives. Yes, it is very important to continue monitoring and use evidence to influence policy change. Thank you.
Then on the next question.
Oh, wait, Fatmata, can I just say one quick thing about this? Is that the first step is really getting people to report, and once people report the violation of the code, depending on what it is, whether they're reporting a donation that was not intercepted or whether they're promoting like advertising of breast milk substitutes or a health facility distributing breast milk substitutes or anything of that sort, the important thing is that these will go to the nutrition cluster, and for the interim the nutrition cluster will determine the best way to take action. So whether or not maybe punishment is kind of a harsh word, but the nutrition cluster will take action in terms of intercepting donations, sending them back, destroying them as per the guidelines on how to destroy food items, and or addressing directly working with whomever they need to work with to stop advertising, to doing media campaigns to stop breast milk advertising on breast milk substitutes and that sort of thing. So there will be ramifications for code violations. It's just done on a case-by-case basis as determined by the nutrition cluster, depending on what violation is reported.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I think that's a very important component you've added there. The guidelines are there and they clearly specify what will happen when code violations are done.
Okay, there's another question or comment that's just come in. Stella's written it. Stella, you're from FAO Somalia, or it's a question? Yeah, question. No, from FAO Somalia. How can we get nutrition-related information for cash-based interventions, especially in agriculture-related activities? A very good question. This is particularly for our multi-sectoral programming.
I think from a multi-sectoral point of view, I mean, agriculture is also a key component to improve nutrition and food security. So I think we will be able to share the action plan, the response plan with FAO, and there are key activities we have highlighted in the response plan and how institutions like FAO who are focused on agriculture can also integrate infant and young child feeding in emergencies in their program. So I think we already have the foundation to do this. What we need is to reach out to each other, I mean, utilize the documents, the information we have as much as possible, and work together to ensure that there are synergies in and also multi-sectoral collaboration in what we're currently doing.
Yeah, and thank you, Fatmata. And just to expand upon that a little more, I think a lot of stuff that was mentioned during this workshop was cross-participation in cluster meetings. So having someone from the agriculture cluster, come to the nutrition cluster meeting and say, hey, we're really interested in getting nutrition, integrating it into our programs. Are there any partners who can help with this or assist with this? And then vice versa, having someone from the nutrition cluster or a nutrition partner attend the agriculture meeting to really make sure we're doing a lot of cross-sectoral integrated programs.
Yeah. Yes, very good point there. Actually, in Somalia, there is the intercluster coordination kind of platform where all cluster leads meet and share information. This would be a very good platform for us to share the available information on IYCFE materials and use it as a platform also to promote dissemination. But like you mentioned, it is also a good opportunity for other clusters to request for such information and for them also to share opportunities through which we can disseminate material to reach the targeted beneficiaries. Yes, very good point here. And of course, the cash-based program is also very good because it targets women, it targets the most vulnerable, and yeah, what a good opportunity to disseminate and reach beneficiaries. Good point. Thank you.
Okay. So there's a follow-up to that, which was thank you and please share contacts. I assume, Stella, you mean the contacts for perhaps John and Fatmata. Is that right? Or do you mind generally? Okay. So perhaps John and Fatmata, you can put your contact details in the message window so that Stella can have that. Wonderful. Are there any other questions before we start to wrap up? Okay. Okay. So normally at the beginning of the call, I actually have everybody present themselves. We were having a little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning, and I didn't do it. And we also had a higher participation today than other days. So I'm sorry that I didn't do that. But I wanted to thank you all very much for joining the webinar. I hope it was useful for you. Feel free to give us feedback where it's more than welcome. And you can send it either to TechRRT at internationalmedicalcorps.org or to me if you've got my address. I put mine in here now so that you all have it. I should actually just put it on the slide for next time. We're learning on each one. And we thank you very much for your participation. I hope you have a lovely day wherever you are.